Chapter 1. Understanding the Energy of the Mind. Welcome to the first chapter of Mind Energy Mastery, How Your Mind Becomes Your Superpower. In this chapter, we are laying the foundation. This is where we start to understand the real nature of your mind, not just as a tool for thought, but as an energetic engine that influences your outcomes, your health, your relationships, your productivity, your mood, and ultimately your reality. You are not just here to be inspired. You are here to be educated, to be equipped with clarity, and to develop mastery over the invisible force that controls how you perceive, react, and create your world. So before we dive deep, take a second and remember to like and subscribe if you find value here. It helps this message reach more people who need to remember who they are and what they're truly capable of. This isn't a video about tricks. This is about understanding and unlocking the most powerful system you already have, your mind. Let's begin with a truth most people don't even realize. Your mind is not just an organ locked in your skull, it's an energetic command center. The mind is not your brain. The brain is physical. The mind is non-physical. It's your field of consciousness. It's the processing system of your thoughts, memories, beliefs, and perceptions. And the quality of your mind's energy, how focused it is, how clean it is, how directed it is, determines everything about the quality of your life. Most people never take time to learn how their mind works. They wake up and immediately become passengers inside their own mental system. Thoughts appear, and they believe them. Emotions rise, and they obey them. Mental noise increases, and they assume it's normal. But you are not your thoughts. You are not your mind's chaos. You are the operator, and this book is going to show you how to reclaim that role. Let's get clear, your thoughts are electric. They carry frequency. And every repeated thought becomes a broadcast signal, shaping how you see the world and how the world responds to you. Think of your mind like a transmitter and receiver. Whatever you repeatedly think, believe, and feel sends out energetic commands. Your perception becomes projection. Your belief becomes blueprint. Your assumptions become instructions. The mind doesn't just reflect reality, it constructs it. Now consider this, your mind consumes energy in two ways, intentionally or automatically. Most people operate in automatic mode. They consume media, conversations, and stimuli without discernment. Their thoughts are mostly reactions. Their focus is scattered. Their mental power is drained by noise, distraction, negativity, and mental habits they didn't even choose. And yet, they wonder why they feel stuck, tired, anxious, unfocused. It's not because life is broken. It's because their mental energy is undirected. Your mental energy is your most vital currency. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, reality forms. It's not magic. It's mechanics. Focused, clean, directed mental energy is like a laser, precise, powerful, and transformative. Scattered, anxious, and chaotic mental energy is like a broken flashlight, barely illuminating, constantly flickering, unreliable, and draining. So the first step to mastery is reclaiming your focus. Focus is your energetic steering wheel. When you direct your attention with intention, you start programming your mental field with clarity and power. Most people think focus means effort, like tightening your brain. That's not what we're doing here. True focus is relaxed awareness. It's knowing exactly where your mind is aimed. It's the ability to bring your attention where it matters and keep it there. Focus isn't just a skill. It's a filter. It determines what data your brain prioritizes, what emotions your body generates, and what actions you unconsciously take. Let's go deeper. Thoughts are not isolated. They exist in clusters. When you repeat a thought, it becomes a pattern. When you reinforce the pattern, it becomes a mental program. That program becomes a lens that filters your experience. And because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, it will create emotional responses based on your mental programming, even if those programs are outdated or destructive. Let's say someone thinks every day, I'm behind in life. I'll never catch up. That thought emits an energy. That energy programs a feeling, stress, pressure, self-doubt. That feeling influences their behavior, hesitation, distraction, procrastination. That behavior reinforces the outcome, low performance, low satisfaction, low confidence. Now multiply that loop across a week, a year, a decade. That's how your mind either becomes your greatest weapon or your heaviest anchor. But here's the shift. That same energy can be redirected. You can use mental energy to fuel clarity, calm, strength, and precision. The key is awareness. When you observe a thought without reacting to it, you gain control over it. When you notice your internal language, your mental images, your emotional anchors, you become the observer instead of the reactor. That one shift changes everything. So let's break it down to the fundamentals of mastering mental energy. First, mental clarity. This means reducing internal noise. Most minds are overcluttered because they're overstimulated. If you constantly feed your brain low-quality inputs, meaningless content, shallow conversations, background stress, you pollute the internal field. Clarity requires boundaries. It means saying no to content that doesn't elevate you. It means clearing space, physically and mentally. It means simplifying your thinking. Fewer inputs. Sharper outputs. Second, mental direction. Energy must move. It needs a target. A mind without direction is like fire without form. It burns everything but creates nothing. What are you focused on? Not just in words, but in thought energy? You must define your aims clearly. Health, growth, strength, precision, creativity. Set the focus, and your mind will start rearranging its pathways to get you there. That's not optimism. That's neuroplasticity. Third, mental discipline. This is not about suppressing emotions. It's about staying committed to your chosen focus, even when emotional turbulence shows up. Discipline is choosing your mental path again and again, no matter what distractions arise. It's not rigidity. It's sovereignty. You choose what to hold and what to release. You train your mind like you train your body. Repetition, intention, feedback, adjustment, progress. Fourth, mental recovery. Just like your physical body, your mind needs restoration. Overthinking is fatigue. Anxiety is overload. You can't just push constantly and expect power. You need stillness. You need silence. Meditation, deep rest, nature, these aren't luxuries. They're fuel stations. The strongest minds don't just think clearly, they recover intentionally. They know that clarity comes from space, not pressure. This is not about positive thinking. It's about energetic sovereignty. It's about mastering the force that drives every decision, every habit, every interaction, every result. The mind isn't just a container for thoughts. It's a field of energy. That field is constantly broadcasting. Your job is to refine the signal, direct the current, and clean the channel. Remember to like and subscribe. And get ready, this is only the beginning. Chapter 2, The Science of Thought Energy and the Frequency of Focus. Your mind is a frequency device. It emits, receives, interprets, filters, and responds to energy. And what most people have never been taught is that thought is not just a mental event, it's a bioelectrical command. Every thought you think sends out measurable electrical impulses. Every emotion you feel generates a magnetic field. The combination of the two, thoughts and emotions, is electromagnetic energy, and that energy creates patterns, momentum, and influence both inside your body and into your environment. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience and physics. Your brain operates through electrical signals. Neurons fire and wire together based on repetition, and those repeated firings form circuits, which become your default mental programs. When you consistently think a certain type of thought, whether it's empowering or defeating, you're not just having an idea. You're reinforcing a signal. That signal becomes the dominant energy your brain prioritizes. Your nervous system adapts to support it. Your attention sharpens to find evidence of it. And your behavior, often without your awareness, starts to mirror it. This is how thought becomes frequency. And frequency becomes life direction. Let's start by breaking down what most people get wrong. They assume thinking is neutral. That if a thought appears, it's just a moment in the mind, nothing more. But thought is momentum. Thought is direction. Thought is a seed. If repeated, it becomes a signal. If nurtured, it becomes a belief. If unexamined, it becomes your identity. You have to stop treating thoughts like casual observations. They are decisions in motion. They are unconscious instructions that tell your body how to feel, your mind what to focus on, and your actions where to go. And unless you slow them down, unless you question them, unless you bring awareness into the system, they run your life without you even realizing you're being run. Let's take a thought like nothing ever works for me. That sentence might seem small, but it has a frequency. When repeated often enough, it shapes your body into low-energy states. Your breathing shortens. Your posture slumps. Your cortisol rises. Your attention begins looking for proof of failure, so even when something does work, you discount it or overlook it. And when something doesn't work, you highlight it. You amplify it. You create an emotional loop that matches the original thought. That loop becomes a frequency signature. And that frequency signature attracts experiences that confirm the narrative. Not because of magic. Because of mental filters and behavioral alignment. Now take a different thought. I learn faster than most people. Repeating this thought might not change your entire life in one day, but it begins to alter the signal. Your focus shifts to solutions. Your body relaxes. Your decisions become more experimental, more curious, more courageous. And over time, this small shift in frequency leads to new outcomes. The person who thinks I learn faster than most people will behave differently than the person who thinks I always struggle to understand. They will enter situations with different energy, and their energy will influence the experience itself. The mind is a frequency generator. The question is never whether you're broadcasting, it's what you're broadcasting and whether you're doing it consciously. Thought frequency is not a metaphor. Your brain emits measurable waves. The slowest frequency is delta, deep, unconscious, dreamless sleep. Then comes theta, associated with meditation, intuition, deep learning. Then alpha, relaxed focus, creativity, memory. Then beta, conscious, alert, problem solving. And finally gamma, high performance, deep insight, transcendence. These are not just brain states. These are energetic environments your thoughts move through. And you can train your brain to shift between these frequencies with awareness and discipline. Most people spend the majority of their day in high beta. That's a state of overthinking, stress, worry, hypervigilance, and mental chaos. In beta, the brain is scanning constantly, reacting, judging, comparing, controlling. That's not where clarity lives. That's not where vision expands. That's not where creativity flows. And that's not where self-mastery develops. You have to train your mind to enter states like alpha and theta more often. That's where you rewire. That's where you install new programs. That's where you become more than your old thoughts. So how do you start shifting your frequency? The first discipline is awareness. You begin to track your inner dialogue. Not just the content, but the tone, the emotional charge, the repetition. When your thoughts lean negative, do they spiral or do they dissipate? When your thoughts are positive, do they feel like power or just wishful thinking? What kinds of thoughts come up when you're quiet, when you're frustrated, when you're excited, when you're challenged? You need to observe the emotional resonance of your thoughts, because that resonance is the frequency you're operating on. The second discipline is intentional interruption. You catch the frequency before it takes root. You don't just let a disempowering thought finish its sentence. You step in. Not to resist it, but to redirect it. You tell your brain, we're not reinforcing that loop today. You don't argue. You redirect. You replace. You choose a thought with equal or greater emotional weight that's aligned with your direction. Not fake positivity. Precision focus. If your mind says, this is going to go wrong, you interrupt and say, this is going to show me where I'm still learning power. If your mind says, I never have energy, you interrupt and say, I'm training my system to generate energy on command. You don't pretend to be superhuman. You remind your system who's in control. And with repetition, the new signal becomes more dominant than the old one. The third discipline is emotional alignment. The body has to believe the thought. You can't just say new things. You have to embody the energy. That means slowing your breath, straightening your spine, opening your chest, grounding your awareness in your body. You link the thought to posture, to breath, to presence. You say the thought until your body responds. Because the thought without the energy is just noise. But the thought with emotion becomes programming. You don't fake confidence. You generate it. You don't wait for motivation. You train your system to respond to intention. That's energy work. That's how mental mastery works. You build a new energetic relationship between the thought and the body starts to respond faster and more powerfully each time. The fourth discipline is repetition. Thoughts don't reprogram with novelty. They reprogram with consistency. If you want a new belief to take root, it must become more frequent than the old one. Not louder. Just more frequent. The subconscious doesn't respond to volume. It responds to consistency. That's why daily focus matters. That's why the people who master their minds are the ones who train them every day, not just when it's convenient. Chapter 3: Reclaiming Mental Control Through Inner Command. The most dangerous habit you've been trained into is automatic thinking. Not thinking itself, but the automation of it, the fact that you allow thought patterns to run wild without conscious approval. This is what breaks your control. Not the content of your mind, but the fact that you never stop to ask who decided it should be there in the first place. A mind that operates on automatic instruction becomes a mind that can no longer distinguish between truth and memory, between direction and distraction, between intention and repetition. And that is what makes mental power slip through your fingers. It's not the intensity of your thoughts that matters. It's your relationship to them. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them, accepts them, or redirects them. But most people live in a state where thought equals instruction. The brain says you can't, and they assume it's accurate. The brain says, what if you fail, and they pause their ambition. The brain says, this is too hard, and they immediately start to feel weak. No testing, no questioning, no sorting. Just obedience to whatever mental habit is loudest in the moment. You cannot master your energy if you're constantly at the mercy of mental noise. You need command. You need to train the inner voice to follow truth, not fear. And that requires separating signal from static. Your brain was never designed to make you happy or successful. It was designed to keep you safe. It's a survival machine, not a clarity machine. Its default mode is risk avoidance, pattern recognition, doubt generation, and emotional exaggeration. It wants to repeat what's familiar, not what's empowering. It wants to prioritize the past, not the future. It wants comfort, not growth. That's not a personal flaw. That's the default human configuration. But that's why training is non-negotiable. If you don't consciously install higher thought patterns, the default will always win. You'll default to hesitation. You'll default to limitation. You'll default to the same loop you've been trying to break out of for years. Command starts with awareness. If you don't hear the thought, you can't challenge the thought. So your first training is to slow the mind just enough to hear what's actually happening. Most of the mental patterns that guide your emotions are invisible to you, because they're not loud, they're consistent. They're always there, like background noise, shaping the way you feel, the way you decide, the way you interpret every moment. When your thoughts run in the background, your life becomes reaction, not direction. So you must stop and observe. What's looping inside your mind right now? Not just the big statements. What's the undercurrent? What's the subtle assumption underneath your choices? You will always behave according to the thoughts you believe, not the thoughts you hope are true. If your core thought is I'm not ready, you will delay action, even if you consciously want to grow. If your core thought is I always mess things up, you will subconsciously create situations where that belief gets confirmed. If your core thought is they won't take me seriously, you'll avoid expressing yourself fully. Every internal belief issues commands to your focus, your language, your body language, and your micro-decisions. That is why transformation does not start with positive thinking. It starts with mental examination. You don't upgrade what you haven't yet diagnosed. You don't rewrite a system you've never questioned. Start listening to your language. Every time you say, I don't have time, you're embedding a pattern that says your schedule controls you. Every time you say, that's just how I am, you're reinforcing that your identity is fixed. Every time you say, this always happens to me, you're assigning permanence to a temporary moment. That language is not random. It's not casual. It's a direct reflection of your mental operating system. And if you want to reclaim mental command, you start by removing default language. You replace vague emotional phrases with clear, instructive ones. Instead of I'm overwhelmed, say I haven't clarified my priorities yet. Instead of I can't focus, say I haven't taken control of my attention yet. Shift the structure of your inner speech so it reflects power, not panic. Your thoughts will reflect whatever you repeat the most. If you repeat fear, fear becomes familiar. If you repeat doubt, doubt becomes dominant. If you repeat ownership, ownership becomes your baseline. This is not about positive thinking, it's about pattern thinking. You need to install new thought patterns deliberately, the same way you would install software updates into your device. And like any software, repetition is required. You can't think a strong thought once and expect it to overwrite a decade of self-doubt. You must repeat it until it becomes the default voice. Until the strong voice is the loudest voice. Until hesitation sounds strange, and power feels natural. That's what mental control is. Not perfection. Not suppression. Just recognition and redirection. You don't need to argue with weak thoughts. You don't need to shame yourself for having them. You simply say, "This thought doesn't serve me," and you replace it with one that does. Over and over. Until the system reconfigures. And it will. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're training it. You are not trying to silence the mind. You are teaching the mind how to speak with accuracy. You are teaching the mind that only thoughts aligned with your values and vision are allowed to take up space. That's not delusion. That's discipline. You've allowed your mind to be a free-for-all of thought traffic for long enough. Time to build filters. Time to build walls around your focus. Time to elevate the internal conversation until it reflects who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Command also means detaching from emotional reactivity. Your emotions are not instructions. They are signals. A signal is something to be noticed, not obeyed. You can feel fear and still act with power. You can feel overwhelmed and still execute the next clear step. You can feel doubt and still speak with clarity. Emotional maturity is being able to say, "I feel this, but I choose this." That's real control. Not waiting until you feel better, but learning how to move while holding tension. That's the only way to grow. You stop waiting for emotional permission. You stop believing that clarity needs to show up before you move. You make decisions based on what aligns with your principles, not what agrees with your mood. Train yourself to make clarity louder than comfort. Make direction louder than distraction. Make ownership louder than excuse. And don't negotiate with the thought loops that have no intention of helping you grow. Let them go. Let them pass. Let them dissolve. They are not you. They are echoes. Let the echo die. And speak something new in its place. This is not a one-time process. It is daily, hourly, constant. But the more often you do it, the faster your brain begins to support your focus. The faster your energy starts to move cleanly. The faster you begin to operate from a mental baseline of power, not panic. Your thoughts will lead your life unless you lead them first. Don't expect your mind to work for you unless you've given it new instructions. Don't expect strength from a system you've allowed to remain chaotic. Reclaim control. One thought. One pattern. One command at a time. Chapter 4. Building Mental Structure Through Daily Cognitive Discipline. Mental power without structure is scattered energy. You can have all the ambition, all the talent, all the potential in the world, but if your thoughts have no structure, you will move in circles. You will wake up with ideas and go to sleep with regret. You will be full of plans and low on action. You will feel motivated one day and distracted for the rest of the week. Clarity without consistency is useless. Energy without direction becomes exhaustion. Discipline is what converts chaos into momentum, and that discipline is not about punishment or self-control for the sake of control. It's about building the kind of mental structure that makes your focus sustainable, reliable, and sharp no matter what is going on around you. Your mind becomes what you repeatedly do. And what you do daily becomes what you believe is normal. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You rise to the level of your systems. Your systems are built through patterns. Patterns are built through repetition. And repetition is controlled by what you prioritize. If you prioritize comfort, your mental habits will reinforce passivity, overthinking, avoidance, and low engagement with your goals. If you prioritize alignment, your mental habits will reinforce action, focus, clarity, and forward momentum. The difference is not talent. The difference is structure. What you build internally becomes your outer capacity. Mental structure starts with your non-negotiables. These are not habits you hope to do. These are not routines that you follow when life feels convenient. These are the anchors that define your mental system. You do them even when it's inconvenient, even when your mood says otherwise, even when you feel like you're too tired, too busy, too distracted. Why? Because discipline is what creates your energetic environment. The reason most people cannot hold their focus for longer than 10 minutes is not because they are incapable. It's because they've never taught their mind that focus is required. They've made discipline optional. And when you make discipline optional, you make power optional. Start by defining the first hour of your day. Before the world gets your attention, your mind must get direction. Waking up and immediately giving your attention to your phone, to social media, to email, to reactive thought patterns, that weakens you. It opens the gate to mental noise before you've even built internal clarity. You need to establish the rule that your first inputs of the day come from internal structure, not external chaos. Whether that's silence, breathwork, writing, review of intention, or mental rehearsal of your day, you must tell your mind what to focus on before the world tells it what to worry about. You must teach your nervous system that it answers to purpose, not panic. The way you think about your schedule matters more than the schedule itself. It's not about being busy. It's about being structured. Structured thinking means you know what matters and when. You know what belongs where. You don't multitask for the illusion of productivity. You segment your day into mental zones: thinking, creating, executing, recovering. When you do this, your mental energy sharpens. You remove the constant fog that comes from trying to do everything at once. You stop reacting to tasks and start directing your energy with strategy. Cognitive discipline also includes eliminating thought clutter. Most people live in constant low-grade anxiety because their mind is filled with loops they've never resolved. Open loops. Undecided decisions. Unfinished thoughts. Mental tabs that stay open in the background, draining energy without giving results. The mind is not built to hold infinite data. It's built to process, resolve, and release. You must create systems for emptying your mind of what doesn't belong. Write things down. Make decisions quickly. Close loops that don't need to stay open. The more you declutter your thoughts, the more space you create for higher focus. Another part of cognitive discipline is conscious task transitioning. Every time you switch from one task to another without awareness, you lose clarity. You carry the residue of the last task into the next one. You don't fully release the emotional state you were in. You bring stress from one conversation into the next. You bring doubt from one failure into the next opportunity. If you don't reset between moments, your mind becomes a sponge instead of a sword. You absorb everything and cut through nothing. You need to implement mental resets between key parts of your day. It takes 30 seconds. Pause. Breathe. Name the transition. Set your intent. Bring your mind to zero before moving forward. This is how you stay sharp hour after hour. Mental structure also means emotional containment. Most people are emotionally reactive because they have no internal space to process what they feel. Something happens, they react. A trigger appears, they spiral. One criticism ruins their focus. One moment of self-doubt destroys their motivation. This is not about being weak. It's about not having an internal holding place for emotion. You must build that space intentionally. Through breath. Through pause. Through the training of not giving every emotion instant permission to become action. Your emotions are data, not direction. Learn to process before you respond. And train your mind to remain clear even when your emotional state fluctuates. Discipline also means conscious consumption. Every piece of content you consume programs your mind. Every voice you listen to shapes your inner voice. Every environment you expose yourself to influences your energetic baseline. If you spend 3 hours a day consuming random information and then wonder why your thoughts are scattered, it's not a mystery. If your feed is filled with comparison, conflict, and confusion, don't be surprised when you start thinking in patterns of doubt and dissatisfaction. Protecting your mental field is not just about avoiding negativity. It's about choosing clarity. You need to filter your inputs the same way you filter your food. High quality in, high performance out. And don't think discipline is about suppression. Discipline is about precision. Suppression hides what needs to be addressed. Precision chooses what gets amplified. You don't ignore what's hard. You acknowledge it and then decide whether it deserves your energy. You don't fight distraction with guilt. You fight distraction with structure. You build a system so strong that you don't need to rely on motivation to stay consistent. The system becomes the guide. The structure becomes the power. Your environment plays a role in mental discipline. You must design your space to reflect the standard you are holding in your mind. A cluttered room reflects a cluttered process. A chaotic workspace reinforces scattered thought. A phone that's filled with notifications is a device of distraction, not productivity. You train your brain to respect your goals by designing environments that support your clarity. Build spaces that pull you into focus. Remove triggers that break your rhythm. Your physical space should act like an anchor, not a distraction. Every thought is a repetition. Every repetition becomes a pattern. Every pattern becomes an identity. Chapter 5. Mastering Inner Stillness to Regain Command Over Your Mind. You can't hear your highest thoughts when your mind is loud with everything that doesn't matter. You can't operate at your full potential when your nervous system is constantly pulled in 5 directions at once. You can't access the deeper levels of mental clarity, power, or presence if you've never created a consistent space to be still. And I'm not talking about sitting on a cushion and escaping life. I'm talking about creating real inner stillness, the kind that anchors you in the middle of chaos, the kind that builds composure under pressure, the kind that clears the debris of mental noise so your most powerful decisions rise to the surface without being filtered through anxiety or fear or distraction or other people's opinions. The strongest minds in the world aren't the loudest. They're not the most reactive. They don't need to make everything urgent. They are calm, focused, centered, clear. And that calmness is not passivity, it's control. It's not weakness, it's power that has been stabilized. It's not that nothing affects them. It's that they've trained their system to return to stillness faster than the world can throw them off. That kind of stability doesn't come from talent or personality. It comes from repeated choices to step back from the noise and recalibrate your inner state until it becomes your default. Most people don't have a mental clarity problem. They have an overstimulation problem. They think their thoughts are confusing when really they've just never had space to actually listen to what's real and what's just reaction. Their mental bandwidth is constantly full. Not because they're doing too much that matters, but because they're giving attention to everything that doesn't. Notifications, commentary, background opinions, surface-level drama. That kind of input overloads your brain's filtering system and turns your mind into a reaction machine instead of a conscious instrument of power. Stillness is not about stopping the world. It's about stopping the war in your head. It's about silencing the emotional momentum that keeps you spinning when all you need is one decision made from calm clarity. You don't need to meditate for 10 hours to experience this. But you do need to create intentional contrast between mental input and mental silence. Just like your muscles need recovery, your mind needs room to reset. You need to be able to access stillness at will, not someday, not on vacation, not only when things are quiet around you, but even in the middle of tension, resistance, or uncertainty. Your mental clarity is not a random event. It's a discipline. It's a product of practice. You train your mind to be still the same way you train your body to get stronger, through repetition and presence. You learn to notice when your thoughts are racing and you bring them back. You learn to detect when your breath is shallow and you deepen it. You learn to recognize when your nervous system is in overdrive and you reset it. These aren't mystical techniques. These are leadership tools for people who want to stop being emotionally reactive and start being strategically responsive. Start with breath. Most people don't breathe. They inhale just enough to survive. Their breath is short, shallow, and reactive. And that sends signals to the brain that you are under threat even when nothing is wrong. Long, conscious, diaphragmatic breathing resets your nervous system faster than any motivational speech or piece of advice. You don't need words. You need oxygen. You need to remind your body that it's safe so your prefrontal cortex can come back online and help you think instead of panic. When your mind is racing, don't try to think your way to calm. Breathe your way there first. Once your body is steady, your thoughts will begin to stabilize. And then you can sort them. You can listen for the ones that are actually useful and release the rest. You are not your thoughts. You are the space they move through. That space must be clean if you want your decisions to be sharp. That space must be calm if you want your actions to be aligned. The next level of inner stillness comes from detaching your identity from urgency. The culture you live in is addicted to immediacy. Everything must be answered now. Everything must be posted now. Everything must be decided now. But urgency is often a symptom of emotional immaturity. It's the nervous system screaming that something is wrong just because it hasn't been validated or resolved yet. Strong minds slow down in moments where weak minds speed up. Not because they lack ambition, but because they know that decisions made in urgency often come from fear, not clarity. If you want to develop real mental mastery, you need to stop mistaking speed for success. You need to recognize when your system is in reaction mode and give yourself permission to pause. The pause is where your power is. The pause is where emotion separates from logic. The pause is where your body catches up with your thoughts and your thoughts get checked by your principles. Most people avoid the pause because they're afraid of what silence will reveal. But silence doesn't reveal weakness. It reveals what's underneath the noise. And if what's underneath is broken, you'd better find out now instead of later when it costs you more. Inner stillness is also built by protecting your mental bandwidth. You are not obligated to entertain every conversation. You are not required to respond to every message the moment it arrives. You are not responsible for constantly explaining your thinking to people who aren't ready to hear it. Strong minds conserve bandwidth. They don't allow emotional freeloaders to hijack their focus. They don't make everything about being understood. They make it about understanding themselves clearly enough that they don't need approval to stay in alignment. There is no mental clarity where there is no boundary. Stillness requires you to say no, not just to others but to yourself. No to the thought spirals that keep you stuck. No to the emotional indulgence of staying upset over something you already decided to move past. No to the mental gossip you rehearse in your own head. No to overthinking things you already know the answer to but are afraid to act on. This kind of discipline isn't glamorous. No one will clap for you when you do it. But it's the discipline that builds the internal silence where your real clarity lives. You also have to train stillness in motion. Too many people wait for the perfect conditions to reset. They wait until the stress is gone, the day is over, the noise has died down. But power is built when you learn to return to stillness in the middle of activity. You walk into a meeting and breathe yourself into composure. You step into a challenge and bring your attention back to your principles. You feel tension rising and ground yourself before your next word. That's leadership. Not just over others, over yourself. You train this by practicing deliberate awareness in small moments. Washing your hands. Taking 3 deep breaths before every call. Looking at a calendar without letting it flood your brain with pressure. Being in silence for 2 minutes before you open your phone. These aren't rituals. These are pattern interrupts. You are teaching your nervous system that it doesn't need to be constantly in motion to be productive. Chapter 6. The Discipline of Emotional Direction and Energetic Integrity. Mental energy without emotional clarity is like having a powerful engine without a steering wheel. You can have all the discipline, all the focus, all the structure, all the intention, but if your emotional field is scattered, your energy will never hit its target. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who feel the least emotion. They are the ones who have trained themselves to feel what needs to be felt without being hijacked by what no longer serves them. They don't suppress their emotions. They sort them. They interpret them. They use them. And they know when to move beyond them. Emotion is energy in motion. If you never give it direction, it controls your direction. What most people call emotional intelligence is simply emotional maturity. It's the ability to hold tension without making it your identity. It's the ability to feel anger without becoming destructive. It's the ability to experience sadness without collapsing into helplessness. It's the ability to feel fear without letting it dictate your behavior. And most importantly, it's the ability to notice what emotion is present and make sure your thoughts and actions are aligned with your vision, not your temporary emotional reaction. You are not obligated to obey your first emotional response. You are not weak for feeling an emotion. You are not broken because you get triggered. But you are responsible for where you go with it. And you are accountable for whether or not that emotion builds your mental structure or breaks your internal rhythm. Emotional mastery is not about detachment. It's about clean engagement. You engage with emotions, not to entertain them indefinitely, but to learn from them, to respond from truth, and then to lead yourself forward without becoming their permanent host. Your nervous system learns through repetition. If you always spiral when someone questions you, you're training your system to associate feedback with threat. If you always shut down when you make a mistake, you're teaching your nervous system to link imperfection with worthlessness. If you always lash out when you feel disrespected, you're teaching your system that control comes through chaos. Emotional direction begins when you stop rehearsing the same reactions and start choosing new responses with consistency, even when it feels unnatural at first. Especially then. Every emotion has a message, but not every message deserves a reaction. Sometimes the message is simply that a pattern is trying to be seen. Sometimes the message is that your boundaries need to be reinforced. Sometimes the message is that you need to pause before you speak. But the message is not always a command. Emotional energy is raw. Without interpretation, it becomes reckless. But with structure, it becomes intelligent. That's when emotion serves you. That's when you stop being a slave to it and start using it as a compass that doesn't run your life, but informs it. Start identifying your emotional loops. Notice what triggers repeat themselves. Notice what words show up in your inner dialogue when a strong emotion appears. Notice how your body responds. Do you tense up, shut down, rush forward, avoid, overanalyze, freeze? These are not random reactions. These are trained survival patterns. And if you never look at them, they become your personality instead of what they really are, outdated defense mechanisms that need to be recalibrated. You don't break emotional patterns with force. You break them with awareness and redirection. You feel the emotion rise, you name it with precision, and then you consciously slow down your reaction time. You create space. And in that space, you insert the question, what would alignment do here? Not what would anger do. Not what would anxiety do. Not what would fear do. What would alignment do? And then you act on that answer, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels forced, even if it goes against your habitual response. Because that is how you build a new energetic baseline. Most people get stuck not because the emotion is too strong, but because they never train themselves to move with emotion rather than from emotion. You can feel fear and still write. You can feel self-doubt and still speak. You can feel insecurity and still move with posture and clarity. Acting in alignment when emotion says otherwise is one of the highest levels of self-leadership. It means your vision outranks your nervous system. It means you are in control, not as a tyrant but as a teacher of your own biology. You train this by practicing emotional translation. Every emotion has a specific instruction underneath it. Anger often means a boundary is being tested. Fear often means growth is being activated. Guilt often means you're living under someone else's standard. Resentment often means you've betrayed your own voice for too long. If you react without translating, you'll repeat emotional stories that don't belong to the future you're building. But if you translate and respond with precision, you extract the power from the emotion without inheriting the chaos of its original form. There is also a difference between emotional pressure and emotional truth. Not every emotional spike is real. Some are echoes of the past. Some are projections of the future. Some are inherited from environments you never questioned. Your job is to sort the real from the residue. Don't carry emotion that was never yours. Don't internalize emotional narratives that come from people who don't live in alignment themselves. And don't build your internal direction on emotional urgency that hasn't been examined through the lens of principle and purpose. Emotional discipline is not about numbness. It's about energetic integrity. It's about making sure that what you feel matches what you're building. It's about protecting the frequency of your field from distortion. It's about choosing what emotional states get reinforced through repetition and what emotional states get released without resistance. That decision is yours every single time something triggers you, something delays you, something agitates you, something pulls at your attention. The question is never whether you'll feel the emotion. The question is whether the emotion will control the direction of your energy. If you let every emotional wave redirect your focus becomes fragmented. If you reinforce distraction with emotional intensity, your mental energy becomes reactive instead of reliable. And then it doesn't matter how smart you are, how disciplined you are, how structured your routines are, if your emotions override your system collapses. That's why this chapter matters. Because your mind cannot stay sharp if your emotional energy is chaotic. You can't build internal strength while feeding emotional states that contradict your values. Start tracking your emotional habits. Not just what you feel, but what you do every time you feel it. Do you distract yourself? Do you numb? Do you overcompensate? Do you shrink? Do you overexplain? These are not random behaviors. These are your conditioned reactions to energy you never learned to hold. Holding emotional energy means you let it rise, name it, interpret it, feel it, and then channel it in the direction of alignment. That's not therapy talk. That's strategic mental hygiene. Chapter 7: Energy Conservation, Mental Filtering, and the Elimination of Hidden Drains. One of the most overlooked keys to high-level mental performance is energetic conservation. Not the superficial idea of working less or taking breaks, but the deeper discipline of managing where your mental, emotional, and cognitive energy is going without your awareness. It is not enough to generate energy. You have to retain it. You have to protect it. You have to structure your day, your focus, your conversations, and your thoughts in a way that prevents unnecessary leakage. Because the mind cannot operate at full capacity while you are feeding low-level loops, giving attention to irrelevant triggers, or running outdated programs that cost more energy than they return. Most people are not tired because they are doing too much. They are tired because they are leaking energy all day. They are mentally engaged in things that have no relevance to their goals. They are emotionally hooked by situations that do not deserve that kind of investment. They are cognitively split between too many open loops. And they normalize that fatigue by calling it busyness or stress, when what they are really experiencing is the cost of unfiltered attention. Every leak in your system is a drop in your potential. And every drop you reclaim is another layer of your mind that becomes sharper, clearer, more effective, more resilient. Start with what you tolerate. Toleration is the silent killer of energy. When you allow habits, environments, conversations, distractions, or inner dialogue to remain in your field even though they violate your standard, you don't just lose time, you lose power. You lose focus. You lose the capacity to go deep because your baseline is constantly being pulled shallow. Toleration is not patience. It is energetic self-neglect. And the longer you tolerate what drains you, the further you drift from your own alignment. The people who feel constantly exhausted are not usually lacking discipline. They are surrounded by tolerations they've never addressed. You don't fix this by working harder. You fix it by filtering harder. You start looking at everything you are giving energy to, and you ask, is this aligned with what I'm building, who I'm becoming, and the energetic standard I've committed to maintain? If it's not, it's a leak. And if it's a leak, it must be closed. You don't argue with it. You don't negotiate with it. You don't defend it. You remove it. You build your focus by subtraction, not addition. You protect your clarity by removing what disrupts it, not by adding more strategies on top of chaos. The next step is identifying where your mind goes when you're not actively directing it. The default focus of your mind reveals your current energetic state. If your mind automatically scans for problems, rehearses old mistakes, predicts worst-case scenarios, replays conversations, or constructs invisible arguments, then your system is running in a defensive loop. That loop uses real energy. It drains your nervous system. It tightens your body. It taxes your focus. You might not notice it when it's happening because it feels familiar, but by the end of the day, the cost becomes obvious. You didn't do that much, but you're tired. Not physically, energetically. And that's not weakness. That's mismanagement. Mental filtering is how you stop that loop. You don't need to control every thought. You need to catch the ones that start spirals. You need to interrupt the ones that pull you into emotion without direction. You need to notice which topics leave you feeling heavy even though you've been thinking about them for weeks without resolution. And once you identify the loop, you close it. You write it down. You make a decision. You release it. You resolve it. You remove it from your internal field. Because unresolved thought loops are like apps running in the background. They keep pulling power even when you're not using them. This requires a new level of awareness. You have to track your attention the same way you track your time. Most people have schedules for their tasks, but no schedule for their focus. They know what they want to do, but they don't know what they want to think. And because of that, they let the mind run according to habit. And most mental habits are built from defense, not design. So their attention becomes reactive, scattered, inconsistent. Not because they lack discipline, but because they've never created a filter. That filter is not a luxury. It's your baseline mental architecture. Build your filter through questions. Before you give attention to something, ask, is this relevant to my top priority right now? Is this aligned with my current focus window? Is this something I can act on, or am I just rehearsing it to feed a pattern of overthinking? The point of a filter is not to suppress your thoughts. The point is to create order. You are not supposed to give equal attention to every impulse. Your mind is not a democratic system. It's a leadership system. You lead your focus. You assign energy based on intention, not emotion. That's how you stop wasting time thinking about things that should have been dismissed 2 weeks ago. Another leak comes from energy-splitting behavior. That means trying to be mentally engaged in multiple things at once. Listening to something while checking your phone. Writing something while checking your inbox. Thinking about 5 decisions while trying to execute one task. This kind of multitasking is not efficient. It is division. And division dilutes power. The mind is not designed for depth without immersion. If you want real energy behind your thoughts, you need to give your full focus to the task in front of you. That's how you build flow. That's how you make progress without burning out. Not by doing more, but by giving more presence to less at once. People burn out not because they work hard, but because they think scattered. Their thoughts are fragmented. Their attention is jumping. Their nervous system never gets to complete a single arc of focus. And because of that, they stay in a low-grade state of energetic tension. That tension becomes their normal. So when silence shows up, it feels boring. When focus is required, it feels like pressure. When execution is needed, they hesitate. Not because they don't care, but because they've never experienced what it's like to think with full bandwidth. They are used to fragments. And you can't master your mind while thinking in fragments. So you reclaim your full bandwidth by slowing everything down. Not the speed of your ambition. The speed of your attention. You choose one point of focus. You block everything else. You hold that line until the task is done, or the timer runs out. And then you release. You don't blend tasks. You don't carry emotional residue into the next segment of your day. You create clean mental transitions. You close one energetic tab before opening another. That's what energy integrity looks like. It's not about always being in control. It's about never leaking by default. Another place people lose energy is by mentally tracking everything. Trying to remember every to-do, every idea, every open conversation. Your brain was not built to be a storage device. It was built to be a processor. You must externalize what you need to remember. Write it. Track it. Systematize it. Free up your cognitive energy to focus on creation, analysis, deep thinking, and decision-making. If you carry your entire life in your head will become overwhelmed. That overwhelm becomes fatigue. Chapter 8: Reprogramming Self-Image to Match the Energy of Your Standards. Your life will never outperform your self-image. It doesn't matter how many books you read, how many systems you build, how many hours you work, how many people you impress. If the person you believe yourself to be is still anchored in limitation, confusion, hesitation, guilt, or inferiority, your mind will always default to the version of you that you have most consistently repeated to yourself. Not the one you post. Not the one you hope for. The one you've rehearsed the longest. The one that operates behind the words. The one that makes decisions when you're under pressure, when you're unsure, when no one else is watching. Self-image is not what you tell others you are. It's the invisible script you've accepted as reality. It's the inner identity that guides how much energy you give to an idea, how much risk you're willing to take, how quickly you bounce back from friction, and how much permission you give yourself to take up space. The subconscious mind will always fight to stay consistent with your dominant self-perception. That means if you believe you're someone who always struggles, your actions will subtly sabotage progress to stay in alignment with that identity. If you believe you're someone who's overlooked, your behavior will unconsciously seek validation in the wrong places to fulfill that narrative. This isn't insecurity. It's code. And it can be rewritten. But only with repetition, alignment, and a new internal structure that is as deliberate as it is unshakable. Reprogramming self-image is not about inflating your ego. It's about cleaning your identity from distortions that were never yours to carry. Every belief about who you are was installed. And most of it was installed without your conscious permission. Childhood experiences, repeated phrases from parents or teachers, the emotional residue of failure, comparisons that rewired your sense of value, moments you interpreted as defining even when they were only temporary. Your nervous system attached meaning to events, and over time, that meaning became your identity. But identity is not destiny. It is a repeated interpretation. An interpretation can be rewritten by someone who chooses to become the authority of their own definition. Start by identifying what you've normalized about yourself that no longer fits the standard you've chosen. Stop calling it just the way I am. That phrase is the trap. That phrase is the wall between who you are and who you could be. You're not disordered. You're not broken. You're not inherently weak, chaotic, inconsistent, or inadequate. You're conditioned. And conditioning can be upgraded with structure, clarity, and consistent energetic reinforcement. You need to define with precision the version of you that lives in alignment with your values. Not your feelings. Not your moods. Not your history. Your values. Because that version already exists. It just hasn't been consistently activated. Most people repeat the same identity because it's what feels most familiar, not because it's what's most true. They say things like I'm not confident, or I'm always anxious, or I procrastinate a lot, as if they're reporting the weather, forgetting that every one of those phrases is a command to the subconscious. Language is code. Every time you repeat a statement about who you are, you reinforce the neural and energetic pattern behind it. The more emotional charge behind it, the deeper the code goes. You don't just describe yourself. You instruct your system. You assign limits. You plant identity loops that become behavioral reality. To reprogram your self-image, your language must become sacred. You stop speaking about yourself with casual self-deprecation. You stop laughing off dysfunction. You stop declaring limitations as facts. You replace statements of identity with statements of direction. Instead of saying, I'm bad with consistency, you say, I'm training my system to operate with daily alignment. Instead of I always mess things up, you say, I'm increasing my precision in everything I do. Instead of I don't trust myself, you say, I'm rebuilding trust with myself through micro-alignment. These are not affirmations. These are instructions. You're not hoping to believe them. You're coding them through repeated execution. That means your behavior must match the code. You don't just say, I'm disciplined. You act with discipline. Even when it's small. Especially when it's small. Because every behavior reinforces identity. Every choice is a vote. Every moment you act in alignment with the version of you that you've chosen, you're casting a vote for that identity to become permanent. And permanence doesn't come from intensity. It comes from consistency. 10 days of small, clear actions will rewire your self-image faster than one dramatic breakthrough followed by another relapse into the old default. This is why discipline matters more than emotion when it comes to reprogramming. Emotion is temporary. Discipline is structural. You can feel like the old you and still act from the new you. You can wake up in the same body, the same environment, with the same thought patterns trying to re-emerge, and still decide to act from a new script. That's power. That's what builds momentum. Not the absence of the old narrative, but the refusal to obey it even when it shows up. Self-image reprogramming also requires energetic congruence. If you say you're becoming a person of clarity but your room is a mess, your calendar is chaos, your diet is scattered, and your conversations are full of emotional noise, then your nervous system is getting mixed signals. Your mind is not just shaped by thoughts. It's shaped by what you tolerate. It's shaped by what you allow to surround you. If your outer world doesn't reflect your chosen self-image, your nervous system won't believe the upgrade is real. It will revert to the old settings. That's why energetic alignment is not about perfection. It's about sending consistent environmental signals that reinforce your internal standards. Create visible cues. Organize your space to match your clarity. Move your body in ways that match your energy. Speak with words that match your integrity. Dress in a way that matches your standard. Treat your time in a way that matches your focus. All of this tells your nervous system that the shift is not a wish, it's a new baseline. And that baseline will hold if the signals remain consistent, not because you're faking it, but because you're embodying it long enough for it to become automatic. Stop negotiating with the old version of you. Stop trying to explain your growth to people who are attached to who you used to be. Stop asking for permission to evolve from environments that benefit from your stagnation. You don't owe loyalty to a self-image that was built on outdated coping mechanisms. You owe alignment to your current standard. You owe precision to the version of you that leads, not reacts. You owe attention to the definition of yourself that matches the energy you've chosen to live with. Every time you act from that alignment, even if it feels unfamiliar, you reinforce the upgrade. Every time you speak from that alignment, even if it feels bold, you strengthen the code. Chapter 9: Eliminating Internal Conflict and Building Unified Mental Alignment. You cannot move with full power while you are internally divided. You cannot think with clarity, act with confidence, or execute with consistency while your system is fighting itself. Internal conflict is one of the most common causes of wasted energy, delayed decisions, weak execution, and psychological fatigue. It's what happens when different parts of your mind are running on contradictory commands. One part of you wants to grow, the other wants to stay safe. One part of you is ready to lead, the other is still asking for approval. One part of you is building discipline, the other is justifying distraction. And as long as those conflicting scripts are active at the same time, no amount of motivation, intention, or planning can fully override the drag on your system. Internal conflict is not a personality flaw. It is the result of unintegrated beliefs, unresolved experiences, and unconscious rules that you've never taken time to upgrade. When those pieces don't match, your mind can't run efficiently. You start second-guessing yourself. You say you want clarity, but you don't act. You say you're committed, but you hesitate. You create plans, but you break them. Not because you're lazy or unmotivated, but because your internal system is running two opposing directives at once. And the cost of that conflict is not always obvious, but it's always present. It shows up in the way you feel stuck even when you're busy. It shows up in the way your execution drops off as soon as discomfort rises. It shows up in the way your mind constantly circles around decisions you thought you already made. The solution is not to force yourself through the conflict. It's to align your system so the conflict dissolves. You do that by making your values, beliefs, and actions match on a fundamental level. You bring coherence to your internal structure. Not by pushing harder, but by removing the contradictions that keep you fragmented. And that begins with awareness. Start by asking where your actions contradict your standards. If you say you value discipline but let yourself slide every time the emotion shifts, you've created an energetic dissonance. If you say you're building clarity but keep putting yourself in chaotic environments, the mind cannot trust its own direction. If you say you're ready to lead but still wait for validation before moving, the system remains divided. You're running a split command. One instruction tells the system to move, the other tells it to wait. And the nervous system chooses the stronger signal. In most cases, that's the older one, because it's been reinforced more. Until you intentionally overwrite that script, the pattern will repeat itself regardless of how much you say you want to change. Internal coherence begins with decisions that are non-negotiable. If you leave too many things open-ended, your mind will continue running simulations instead of committing to action. When you decide what matters, you remove 50% of the confusion. Most of the exhaustion people feel isn't from work. It's from internal indecision. They're carrying around 5 unfinished loops in their head all day, replaying imaginary debates, asking the same question in slightly different forms, looking for a level of certainty that will never arrive. Because certainty doesn't come before action. It comes after repeated alignment. Once you decide what your standards are, you start running every thought and behavior through the filter of that standard. Not based on how you feel in the moment, but based on what you've already chosen to be true. This gives your mind structure. It eliminates the need to renegotiate with yourself every time you hit friction. It replaces emotional reaction with principle-driven response. And over time, it builds internal trust. Your system learns that you're no longer in conflict. Your actions are no longer optional. Your emotions no longer override your clarity. That's how unity is built. Not through mental hype, but through consistent structural behavior that reinforces alignment. Another source of internal conflict is loyalty to outdated identities. This happens when one part of you has evolved, but another part of you still feels responsible for maintaining who you used to be. Maybe you were always the one who kept things calm, so now you feel guilty when you assert yourself. Maybe you were known for being funny or carefree, so now being serious feels like you're betraying that image. Maybe you were always the underdog, so success feels like you're stepping into unfamiliar territory. That kind of tension doesn't always show up as obvious resistance. Sometimes it hides under the surface as hesitation, avoidance, perfectionism, or self-sabotage. And until you break that loyalty to the old identity, you will continue to feel friction every time you try to level up. You resolve this by making peace with the fact that the version of you that got you here cannot take you forward. You don't have to shame the old version. You don't have to pretend it never existed. You just have to stop trying to live under its rules. You're not here to maintain comfort for others who knew the older you. You're here to align with truth. And truth evolves. Identity is not supposed to be fixed. If it stays the same for too long, it becomes a prison. So you have to give yourself full permission to let go of the pieces that no longer fit, even if they once protected you, even if others are still attached to them, even if the new you doesn't feel fully accepted yet. Internal alignment also means recognizing when your beliefs were never yours to begin with. A huge percentage of your mental operating system is inherited. From culture. From environment. From repetition. From people you trusted when you were too young to question. Those beliefs got embedded into your subconscious and now shape how you think, how you speak, how you plan, how you act. But most of those beliefs have never been tested. They've just been obeyed. And that's why your system still runs commands that contradict your goals. You start rewriting those beliefs by asking one question: is this mine? Is this belief actually based on direct evidence and personal alignment, or was it simply repeated enough times that it became familiar? That question alone will reveal how many of your current thought patterns are based on programming, not principle. Once you see that, you can begin to replace them. Not with random affirmations, but with statements that reflect your chosen values and are backed by daily behavior. Because belief doesn't change with theory. Belief changes with reinforcement. You cannot say you believe in your power and act like you're powerless. You cannot say you believe in focus and live in distraction. You cannot say you believe in growth and keep obeying your comfort. Your system tracks the behavior more than the language. So when you act in alignment with a belief long enough, your subconscious begins to install it as the new baseline. It no longer feels like something you're trying to believe. It feels like something you simply are. That's when the conflict fades. That's when the mental split dissolves. That's when you stop needing to force momentum, because your system is no longer pulling in two directions. Chapter 10: Mental Resilience Through Thought Repetition and Emotional Neutrality. Mental resilience is not toughness in the way most people define it. It's not aggression, bravado, or pretending that nothing affects you. Real mental resilience is quiet. It is unshaken. It is steady, measured, and sustainable because it is built through internal repetition, not external force. It is the product of someone who has trained their system to respond to life without collapsing into chaos every time something unexpected happens. It is what happens when your nervous system learns that discomfort does not require panic, that tension does not need to become resistance, and that challenge does not mean something is wrong. It means something real is happening, and you are capable of holding your ground in the middle of it. Resilience is built in the micro moments where you choose the long-term standard over the short-term emotion. It is the choice to stay grounded in the middle of triggers, to keep showing up when you don't feel like it, to continue behaving in alignment with your values when your circumstances no longer reward you instantly. If you cannot hold your rhythm when results are delayed, you were never resilient, you were just excited. If your consistency breaks every time your mood dips, your system is not yet trained, it's still reactive. Resilience is not the absence of difficulty. It is the presence of a trained response to difficulty. And the only way that response becomes automatic is through repeated exposure, paired with deliberate control of your focus, language, and emotional posture. You cannot rely on emotional highs to build mental strength. You must become emotionally neutral while remaining highly intentional. This is a practice most people never develop because they confuse neutrality with detachment. Emotional neutrality does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop leaking your energy into reactions that do not serve the direction you've already committed to. It means you stop adding unnecessary emotion to situations that simply require execution. It means you stop labeling every challenge as a threat and start seeing it as a training ground for precision. When you are emotionally neutral, your energy is clean. It is sharp. It is not clouded by dramatized mental narratives or inflated emotional interpretations of basic friction. This state is trained, not found. And it starts by practicing how to breathe, think, and act inside discomfort without needing to escape it. Repetition builds mental resilience because the nervous system learns through patterns. Most people experience resistance and take that as a cue to pause, quit, shift direction, or overanalyze. But resistance is not a signal to stop, it is the invitation to build stability. It is the opportunity to prove to your system that you can still act without ideal conditions. When you train yourself to keep moving under pressure, your system begins to trust itself. When you choose to finish the task even when it's inconvenient, your identity shifts from conditional to dependable. Every time you act from standard instead of sensation, you prove to your nervous system that it is safe to execute even when the emotional environment is not perfect. That kind of repetition builds the kind of confidence that doesn't need to be hyped, validated, or constantly reinforced externally. It lives in the structure of your behavior. Thought repetition is not affirmation. It is focused reprogramming of the mental loops that shape your default response. You cannot think one strong thought and expect it to override a decade of mental habit. You must embed it through spaced repetition, linked to behavior, reinforced by structure, supported by aligned emotion, and measured by consistency. You don't repeat it to feel good, you repeat it to install a new baseline. The thought must match your behavior. It must be activated under pressure. It must be revisited in the middle of discomfort. That's when it starts to overwrite the old mental code. Not when things are calm, but when your nervous system is stressed and still obeys the upgraded instruction. That's how belief becomes automation. The words you repeat in your mind matter more than the motivation you feel. Internal language must be deliberate. Every phrase you repeat becomes a command to the subconscious. The reason most people stay stuck is because their dominant thought under pressure is still some version of "this is too much, I can't handle this," or "what if I fail?" These thoughts may be unconscious, but they create real physiological responses: tightened breath, elevated heart rate, shallow focus, emotional urgency. You cannot control every thought that appears, but you can override it with one that has been trained to replace it. This requires choosing one thought, one phrase, one command that matches your chosen identity, and drilling it into your nervous system every single day, until your brain fires that command before the fear has a chance to take over. The structure of mental repetition must be tied to real experience. Do not recite words that do not match your behavior. Your subconscious will reject them as false. Instead, use thought repetition to reinforce your actual discipline. Say, "I finish what I start," after you finish a task, not before. Say, "I move with precision," when you execute cleanly under pressure. Say, "I'm calm under fire," when you regulate your breath while taking action. Link the repetition to lived experience. That is how the system begins to believe the identity. Not because it sounds good, but because it was proven through repetition and pattern recognition. Resilience also means not chasing relief. Relief is not the same as recovery. Relief is what your system seeks when it has not been trained to handle discomfort. It chases the dopamine hit, the numbing behavior, the distraction, the external validation. But relief is temporary, and it comes at the cost of long-term stability. Real recovery is built through deliberate restoration that reinforces clarity, not avoidance. Resilient people rest without escaping. They recover without disconnecting from their values. They restore without detaching from their standard. That's why their energy lasts. Not because they avoid stress, but because they manage recovery with the same intention they bring to execution. Another aspect of mental resilience is the ability to remain emotionally consistent regardless of result. You must build your emotional structure so that you no longer depend on results to stay in alignment. If success makes you arrogant and failure makes you collapse, you're still emotionally dependent. If praise energizes you and criticism shuts you down, you're still governed by external reinforcement. You must build the kind of stability that moves the same regardless of feedback. Not because feedback doesn't matter, but because your actions are no longer emotionally entangled with the outcome. You do not build power through outcome. You build power through clarity, and that clarity cannot be dependent on what you receive in return. It must be built on who you choose to be before, during, and after the result. Resilience is not built in peaks. It is built in rhythm. Peaks are emotional. Rhythm is structural. You build rhythm by doing the work when it feels repetitive. You show up with consistency when the world is silent. You keep your inner voice clean when no one is watching. Chapter 11: Building Identity Through Behavioral Alignment and Mental Ownership. You cannot build lasting internal power if your identity is disconnected from your behavior. You can talk about discipline. You can write about clarity. You can post about consistency. But if your actions do not mirror the standards you speak, your nervous system will not believe you. It will reject every word you say as false data. It will default to the identity that is most frequently reinforced through your decisions, your posture, your tone, and your patterns. Most people want to change their lives without changing their behavior, and then they wonder why their system remains the same. Identity is not a goal. It is a reflection. It is the sum of repeated proof. And if you want your self-image to evolve, you must give your mind the evidence it needs to build a new default. There is no version of you in the future that you can become through imagination alone. There is only what you consistently do. That is who you are. Not what you feel. Not what you hope for. Not what you plan in theory. Who you are is how you behave when the emotion wears off. Who you are is what you choose when no one is holding you accountable. Who you are is what you repeat without being told. Identity is not found in your thoughts. It is reinforced in your behavior. And when your behavior is inconsistent with the identity you claim to be building, your system becomes confused. That confusion leads to hesitation, self-doubt, and internal tension. And when those things build over time, your momentum collapses. There is a very clear way to eliminate this misalignment. You begin by structuring every behavior through the lens of identity reinforcement. That means you stop doing things just because they are productive, and you start doing them because they are identity aligned. There is a difference between working hard and working in character. There is a difference between checking tasks and reinforcing who you are. If you only do the work to finish the task, you miss the point. The point is to become someone who executes without emotional negotiation. The point is to make the action part of your definition. The point is to turn behavior into belief by repeating it until it no longer requires internal debate. Most people build habits to get a result. But the result is not what matters. The identity you are reinforcing while doing the habit is what matters. If you work out to get in shape but hate yourself the whole time, your subconscious receives a signal of self-rejection, not discipline. If you write daily but complain constantly, your subconscious attaches resentment to the habit. If you show up but rush through the task just to be done, your nervous system learns that completion is more important than alignment. And then when life gets harder, you won't trust the habit to hold you. You won't trust the standard to sustain you. Because what you built was effort, not identity. What you reinforced was productivity, not power. So shift your focus from outcomes to embodiment. You train yourself to behave in alignment with the version of you that you want to be known for. And you repeat that behavior until it becomes instinct. You rehearse the posture of calm. You repeat the cadence of clarity. You return to the same baseline of rhythm even when the emotion shifts. You stop performing and start proving. Not to others. To your own nervous system. Because until your system has proof, it will not support the shift. It will cling to the old pattern, even if you hate it, because it is familiar. The brain will always choose the most familiar pattern unless a new one is deliberately reinforced. That is why repeating discipline is more important than feeling inspired. That is why anchoring your behavior to identity is more important than waiting to believe. Belief does not lead behavior. Behavior leads belief. And if you're waiting to feel confident before you act, you'll be waiting for a signal that can only come from proof. Take the action. Make the decision. Execute the standard. And do it consistently enough that the nervous system starts to rewire its expectation. That's when confidence arrives. Not because you thought it into existence. Because you proved it. Ownership is the foundation of behavioral alignment. If you still blame your environment, your schedule, your background, your stress, or your feelings for your inconsistency, you are delaying the upgrade. You cannot build a new identity while dragging old excuses into your reasoning. You cannot build self-respect while continuing to look outside of yourself for permission, validation, or certainty. Ownership is not about guilt. It is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about taking back authority over your direction. It is about closing the gap between what you say and what you do. It is about making sure that no part of your life is controlled by narratives that keep you stuck in a loop of self-betrayal. You have to understand what self-betrayal actually is. It is not forgetting your goals. It is not being lazy. It is the repetition of choices that contradict your declared standard. And every time you choose short-term emotion over long-term clarity, you reinforce a self-image that cannot be trusted. Every time you break a promise to yourself, Even if no one sees it, your nervous system tracks it. That data accumulates. It builds emotional resistance. It makes it harder to trust yourself the next time you make a decision. That's why most people stop believing in their ability to change. Not because they failed once, but because they broke alignment too many times without repairing the trust through consistent action. So repair it. Start now. No need to fix the past. No need to explain it. Begin where you are. Pick one habit, one decision, one small behavior, and do it every day without excuse. Not to reach a goal. To prove that you can behave from identity instead of emotion. You build from there. Slowly. Intentionally. Repetition without drama. Standards without negotiation. When the resistance shows up, you don't need to argue with it. You act anyway. That act reinforces identity. That identity reinforces belief. That belief changes behavior. And the loop becomes positive instead of destructive. There is another layer to behavioral alignment that most people ignore. It's not just what you do. It's how you do it. Tone matters. Posture matters. Energy matters. If you execute your habits with resentment, sarcasm, resistance, or hesitation, you are feeding a distorted signal to your system. But if you bring presence, structure, precision, and quiet conviction, even to the smallest task, you elevate the energetic frequency of your action. You are not just completing something. You are building the internal language of someone who does what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, regardless of how they feel. That is what separates reactive people from powerful people. Not the task. The energy behind it. You also need to eliminate the pattern of delayed alignment. If you tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow, or I'll be more focused next week, or I'll fix this when I have more time, you are reinforcing the belief that your behavior is conditional. And when your behavior is conditional, your identity will always be fragile. You must train your system to act now, not later. To align now, not when it's easier. To execute now, not when you feel ready. Chapter 12. Mental Elevation Through Inner Environment Control and Thought Hygiene. Your external reality is a reflection of your internal environment. If your life feels cluttered, unclear, reactive, or unfocused, you are not just experiencing external disorganization. You are running an inner operating system that tolerates chaos, lacks precision, and responds to emotion more than structure. The outer world is not the starting point. It is the echo. If you want to elevate how you perform, think, decide, build, or show up, you must first examine what your mind is allowed to repeat, what it amplifies, what it stores, and what it treats as normal. This is not about motivation. This is about thought hygiene, environmental calibration, and internal standards that do not bend under pressure or permission. Every thought you entertain is an energetic decision. Every piece of information you allow in becomes part of your mental landscape. The problem is not thinking. The problem is uncontrolled thinking. Thought pollution is real. And most people live in a state of it without realizing it. Rehearsing the same outdated conversations, looping old fears, running imaginary scenarios, tracking opinions that don't align with their path, engaging in comparison disguised as research, consuming reactive content under the label of staying informed. All of these are forms of internal noise that degrade cognitive bandwidth and emotional capacity. If your mind is cluttered, your execution will always feel heavy. If your thought patterns are undisciplined, your energy will remain fragmented. You build mental clarity the same way you build physical strength, by removing what weakens you and reinforcing what sustains you. If you don't clean the mental environment daily, your system will default to what it hears the most. That means if you spend 6 hours absorbing disorganized information, 5 minutes of intention cannot clean it. Your thoughts respond to volume and frequency. Your system builds identity based on what is repeated and emotionally reinforced. So if you repeat confusion, you become someone who operates in hesitation. If you repeat urgency, you become someone who defaults to panic. If you repeat structure, you become someone who defaults to clarity. Not because of talent, but because of repetition and filtration. Mental elevation begins with control of inputs. The same way you would never put garbage fuel into a high-performance machine, you must stop letting anything with a signal into your mental field. That means you filter what you read, what you watch, what you scroll through, what you consume with your eyes and ears. This is not about becoming disconnected from the world. This is about optimizing the energy you use to build your direction. You must decide what your mental environment is for: dopamine hits or durability, validation or vision, stimulation or strength. Once you define that, your filters are no longer a luxury. They are a baseline requirement. You must also control the tone of your inner dialogue. Thought hygiene is not just about the content of thoughts. It's about the tone they carry. If your inner voice constantly speaks in judgment, sarcasm, guilt, or self-doubt, your nervous system receives every one of those words as commands. You are not just having a conversation with yourself. You are writing the script your system follows. You must train your inner voice to speak with the same clarity, calmness, directness, and precision that you expect from a great leader. You do not allow sloppy thinking. You do not allow language that undercuts your strength. You do not allow repeated self-interruption disguised as humility. You clean the tone. You sharpen the phrasing. You practice thinking in commands that match your character, not just your current emotional state. That also means becoming aware of thought loops that appear when your mind is idle. Most people assume that random thought loops are harmless. They are not. They are repetition in disguise. Every time you rehearse a worry, you reinforce its pattern. Every time you entertain self-criticism, you build emotional muscle memory that weakens your baseline. Every time you rerun conversations in your head that serve no current purpose, you are stealing bandwidth from present clarity. This doesn't mean you suppress all thought. It means you redirect it with intention. You train your brain to return to thought pathways that reinforce the direction you have already chosen. The only reason internal noise wins is because it has been allowed to run without resistance. Once resistance is installed, once redirection becomes habitual, once clean thought becomes more frequent than chaotic thought, the system adjusts. You don't need to eliminate every negative thought to perform with strength. You need to make sure the dominant thought patterns are aligned, clean, and structured. You need to make sure your mind knows what to prioritize when pressure rises. You need to create so much clarity in the background that even when disruption appears, the system doesn't collapse. Your inner environment also includes the emotional residue you allow to linger. Emotional dust collects when situations are not closed, when conversations remain unresolved, when decisions are made without alignment, when goals are pursued without clarity. These things leave behind tension. And tension that is not addressed becomes internal static. You must clear this deliberately. That means finishing what needs to be closed, speaking what needs to be said, writing what needs to be clarified, deciding what needs to be decided. Mental tension is not always visible, but it is always heavy. And when you carry too much of it, your thinking narrows, your vision shrinks, your reactions intensify, and your mental rhythm collapses under pressure. Chapter 13: Advanced Strategies for Embedding Resilience and Consistency in Daily Life. The true test of any philosophy or strategy is its application under real-world conditions. When you're aiming to embed resilience and consistency into your daily life, the challenge isn't just understanding the concepts, it's living them in such a way that they become more than habits, they become part of your identity. This requires more than intention. It requires a system that you trust and a mindset that you cultivate continuously, especially when faced with adversity. First, consider the role of advanced mindfulness in developing resilience. Mindfulness, often misunderstood as simply a form of meditation, is in fact a tool for mental clarity and emotional regulation. It is the practice of becoming acutely aware of your thoughts and feelings without judgment. Advanced mindfulness extends this to understanding the triggers and patterns that lead to your responses. By mastering this skill, you can preemptively manage reactions that might otherwise disrupt your consistency. To embed this into your daily routine, start small. Dedicate moments throughout your day for quick mental check-ins. Before beginning a new task, pause for 30 seconds to assess your emotional state and thought patterns. This isn't a break, it's a reset. It's a strategic realignment of your internal environment to ensure you're operating from a place of clarity and purpose. Over time, these pauses will help you maintain a baseline of focus, significantly boosting your productivity and resilience. Second, the practice of strategic visualization is crucial. While many think of visualization as the practice of imagining positive outcomes, strategic visualization involves mentally rehearsing the process, not just the end result. This means visualizing the steps you will take, the obstacles you might encounter, and the strategies you will employ to overcome them. This type of visualization prepares you mentally for the reality of the journey, equipping you with the resilience to handle challenges as they come. Each morning, or just before tackling a major task, spend a few minutes visualizing the process. Picture yourself encountering a problem and navigating through it successfully. Feel the satisfaction of solving the issue, not just of completing the task. This mental rehearsal primes your brain to think in terms of solutions and pathways rather than obstacles and barriers. Third, develop a ritual of evening reflection and preparation. Reflection is your opportunity to audit your day, what went well, what didn't, and why. Preparation is about setting up the next day for success. This dual approach not only enhances your sense of control and foresight, but also solidifies the lessons learned each day, embedding them deeper into your cognitive structure. Make this ritual a non-negotiable part of your evening. Spend 10 minutes reviewing your day and another 10 preparing for tomorrow. Write down 3 things you accomplished and 3 things you learned. Then, outline your top priorities for the next day. This process ensures that each day is a step forward, no matter how small, and prevents the stagnation that can come from unexamined routines. Fourth, embrace the practice of disciplined flexibility. This might seem like a contradiction, but resilience is as much about bending without breaking as it is about standing firm. Disciplined flexibility means having a clear plan but being prepared to adapt it as situations change without losing sight of your ultimate goals. To cultivate this, challenge yourself regularly to step outside your comfort zone in controlled ways. Change your routine, try new approaches to tasks, or introduce new tools and technologies that might improve your efficiency. Each adaptation requires a reassessment and realignment of your strategies, which reinforces your ability to remain focused and effective under changing circumstances. Finally, understand the power of compounded consistency. Every day that you apply these strategies, you might not see a dramatic difference. But over weeks and months, the effects compound. You become more resilient not because you feel less stress or fewer challenges, but because your ability to handle them has grown exponentially. Your baseline for what you can handle changes. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What was once stressful becomes routine. This is the ultimate test of your growth. Chapter 14: Cultivating Mental Agility and Strategic Thinking. In the landscape of mental development, agility and strategic thinking stand as pillars that support not just the achievement of goals but the mastery of one's own mental processes. Mental agility is the ability to adapt your thinking quickly and effectively to new situations, challenges, and information. It allows you to navigate the complexities of life with a finer understanding of contexts and variables at play. Strategic thinking, on the other hand, involves the foresight and planning necessary to achieve long-term goals and visions. It's about aligning your daily actions with your overarching objectives, ensuring that every step you take is not just reactive but deeply intentional. To develop these qualities, you must first embrace the practice of critical thinking. Critical thinking isn't just about questioning facts or the validity of information, it's about questioning your own thinking processes. How do you come to conclusions? Are your decisions based on emotions, biases, or proven principles? The ability to scrutinize your own thoughts and decisions is fundamental in sharpening your mind's agility. This self-scrutiny leads to a refined approach where mental flexibility becomes a reflex, not just a deliberate shift made occasionally. Implement daily practices that challenge your cognitive flexibility. Engage in activities that require problem-solving and creative thinking. Puzzles, strategy games, and learning new skills are practical ways to enhance your cognitive flexibility. Each of these activities forces your brain to navigate new territories, build new neural pathways, and rethink known strategies, which is the essence of mental agility. Simultaneously, you must cultivate strategic thinking by setting clear, well-defined goals that align with your values and long-term vision. But setting goals isn't enough. The key is in the execution, which must be strategic and methodical. Break down your long-term goals into actionable steps. This not only makes them more manageable, but also allows you to see the direct line between what you do daily and your larger aspirations. Each small victory is a step towards a larger success, reinforcing your strategic thinking with each completed task. Furthermore, strategic thinkers are adept at identifying potential obstacles long before they encounter them. They plan contingencies and are prepared to pivot as needed. To develop this ability, regularly conduct a thorough analysis of your plans. Ask yourself, what could go wrong? And how will I respond? This preemptive thinking helps in building a resilient mindset that does not falter at the first sign of trouble, but adjusts and progresses. Incorporate reflection into your routine. The act of reflecting on your successes and failures is crucial for developing mental agility and strategic thinking. Reflection allows you to learn from your experiences, to understand what worked, what didn't, and why. This understanding is vital for refining your strategies and approaches moving forward. Make it a habit to reflect at the end of each day or after completing significant tasks. This doesn't need to be a lengthy process. A few minutes can suffice if done consistently and thoughtfully. Emotional intelligence also plays a significant role in enhancing your mental agility and strategic thinking. Being able to manage your emotions, particularly in stressful or unexpected situations, allows you to maintain clarity and focus. Develop your emotional intelligence by practicing mindfulness and actively seeking feedback from others about how you handle and react to situations. Understanding your emotional responses and learning to control them ensures that your decisions are driven by logic and strategy rather than impulses. Finally, cultivate an environment that stimulates your mental agility and supports your strategic thinking. Surround yourself with people who challenge you intellectually and who support your growth. Engage in ongoing learning, whether through formal education, reading, or conversations with knowledgeable individuals. The environment you create around yourself can either stifle your mental growth or propel it forward. Choose resources and relationships that foster and challenge your cognitive development. Mental agility and strategic thinking are not static qualities. They are dynamic skills that can be developed and honed over time with deliberate practice and commitment. By integrating these practices into your daily life, you prepare yourself not only to meet the challenges ahead but to anticipate them and act with precision and adaptability. This proactive approach to personal and professional life sets the stage for sustained success and fulfillment, making you not just a participant in your life but a strategic architect of it. Chapter 15: The Power of Legacy Thinking in Shaping a Purpose-Driven Life. As we explore the final chapter in this series on mastering mental strength and strategic thinking, it's crucial to turn our focus toward a concept that unites all aspects of mental resilience, discipline, and agility: legacy thinking. Legacy thinking is not just about the memories or assets you leave behind. It's about the impact and influence of your daily actions and the broader implications of your life's work. It's a forward-thinking approach that challenges you to consider the long-term effects of your decisions, not just on your own life but on those around you and future generations. To cultivate legacy thinking, begin by defining what you want your legacy to be. This is not merely about career achievements or personal success, it's about the values you want to embody and propagate. Do you want to be remembered for your courage, your innovation, your compassion, or your integrity? Deciding what virtues you wish to be known for can guide your decisions and actions, ensuring they're aligned with your deepest convictions. Once you have a clear vision of your desired legacy, integrate it into your daily practices. This means making decisions that consistently reflect the values and impact you wish to have. Every choice, from the way you interact with others to the projects you undertake, should contribute to the narrative you're building. This isn't about grand gestures but the cumulative effect of countless small deliberate actions. Legacy thinking also involves a high degree of responsibility and accountability. It requires you to be acutely aware of the consequences of your actions, not just for the immediate outcomes but for the ripple effects they create. To manage this effectively, cultivate a habit of critical reflection and foresight. Continually ask yourself, what are the potential long-term impacts of my current actions? This approach will not only deepen your understanding of the consequences of your choices, but also enhance your ability to anticipate and mitigate potential negative outcomes. Furthermore, to truly live a life that is aligned with your vision of your legacy, you must also invest in relationships and community. The bonds you forge and the community you build around you are integral to your legacy. They are the carriers of your values and your work after you are gone. Therefore, nurturing these relationships and contributing positively to your community should be a cornerstone of your legacy thinking. Engage in mentorship, participate in community service, and collaborate on initiatives that align with your values. These activities help solidify your legacy by embedding your values in the fabric of your community. Additionally, embrace the practice of teaching and sharing your knowledge. Legacy isn't just about what you leave behind, it's also about what you pass on. By teaching others, whether formally or informally, you multiply the impact of your knowledge and experiences. You transform your personal journey into a shared roadmap that can guide others long after you are gone. This not only amplifies the effect of your work, but also ensures that your insights and lessons continue to influence and inspire. Lastly, prepare to adapt and evolve. Legacy thinking does not mean stubborn adherence to a fixed plan. On the contrary, it requires an openness to growth and change, recognizing that as the world evolves, so too must your approaches and methods. Stay informed about changes in your field and society at large, and be willing to adjust your strategies to maintain the relevance and effectiveness of your legacy. This adaptive approach ensures that your legacy remains vibrant and meaningful, regardless of changing circumstances. In closing, legacy thinking transforms the way you live and work. It shifts your focus from immediate gratification to enduring impact, from personal success to communal benefit, and from being merely productive to being profoundly influential. As you conclude this series and continue your journey, let legacy thinking be your compass. It will guide your steps towards not just a successful life but a significant one, a life that leaves a lasting imprint on the fabric of humanity. Embrace this perspective, and watch as every facet of your life aligns with a deeper, more enduring purpose. Your legacy is not just what you leave for people, it's what you leave in them.